Okay, good morning, everybody. We're at the bottom of Daf Chav Amud Beis. Okay, we discussed, I'll summarize briefly what we started the new sugya last Thursday regarding the takana of Ezra about a Balkari who cannot say words of Torah or tefillah. So we discussed how the Mishnah says that one who's a Balkari can think in his heart about the Shema, but does not think in his heart about the blessings before and afterwards. And the benching, he can think in his heart the bracha afterwards, but not the bracha before. And Rabbi Yehuda says he can think about the bracha before and after. Okay, forgetting about the second part. So now we wanted to understand what is the Mishnah actually teaching us. So Ravina said the mitzvah is teaching us the concept of hirhur kedibur dami, that thinking is like speaking. And what was the proof from the Mishnah? Because if thinking is not like speaking, then what does it help to think, right? If the thinking is nothing, then what did it help at all? You accomplished zero. So then the Gemara says, so that if thinking is like speaking, you might as well say it already. What did it change? So he said it has to be like at Sinai. At Sinai, what was the issue? So let's just read off this last part. That Ezra's decree was patterned the way we came to it to Sinai. So when the Torah is given at Sinai, it was complete purity from Tumah, and carried, men stayed 3 days away from their wives. So that's before any, so he patterned it the same way, like at Sinai. So it restricted only the recitation of the words, because at Sinai, Hashem spoke to the Jewish people listened to what Hashem said. And once you have that, we have an idea of Shomea Ka'oina. So the Jews heard it. And when you hear someone speaking, that is like you are speaking. So Ezra's decree barred people from actually speaking. But that was the only thing they weren't allowed to speak. So now when somebody else is not reading it for you, so that you're not speaking it. So therefore, it was the speaking that was prohibited and not the hearing. So therefore, it fits in. So that was the proof that hirhur kedibur, because now it's like you said, it's like you thought the Shema, but it's not exactly. And so you take care of the dibur aspect by thinking, but then again, it wasn't actually saying it. What was actually saying it would be prohibited. So that's the first answer, and therefore it's saying here is kedibur. Rav Chisda Amar. Okay, now we're starting new stuff, and this is the dissenting opinion. Rav Chisda Amar, hirhur lav kedibur dami. Thought is not equivalent to speech. And therefore, if you're supposed to say the Shema, you're supposed to say it. You cannot fulfill your obligation with contemplation alone. So what's he going to do with the Mishnah? The Mishnah says you could think, and if it's not like Dibur, then what does it help? And that's what the Gemara is going to ask. And well, first we're up to the proof. Disal kadaita hirhur kedibur dami, because if you thought that here was like speaking, so if it's actually like speaking, this was Gemara's question. When Gemara asked it as a question before, now it's a proof. So let him actually say it. And the fact is, Elamai, hirhur lav kedibur dami. And therefore, here is a lot like speaking, because he feels that the decree of Ezra would be even in that case. And the decree is because if actually, so then let him say it. That was the original Gemara's question. Then the Gemara had to resolve it then. So that if that's the case, Lama Mahar, it's the same questions we had before, But if you're saying it's not kedibur, then why are you being maharer? Why are you thinking if it's not like dibur? So Gemara has a whole different answer. Amar Rabbi Lazar. So Rabbi Lazar says, you know what? The truth is, the Balkari does not fulfill the mitzvah of saying the Shema. He holds that the Takana of Ezra is so deep, you can't do anything that would be interpreted as any kind of speaking. And therefore, here is not kedibur, and there really is no point in you saying it. So if there's and you're not fulfilling any mitzvah, it would appear. So if that's the case, so why are you saying it at all? Why are you thinking it at all? If here is not kedibur, what have you accomplished? If you're holding here is not like dibur, thinking is not like speech, so what's the whole point of thinking it? So he answers for way emotionally, we'll say, because you wouldn't want that the whole world is busy saying the Shema. For who yoshev batal, and the guy sits idly. Okay? In other words, it doesn't look proper. Everybody in Shul is saying Shema, and he's sitting around and doing nothing. That's one way of looking at it. Or everybody's getting to do it, and he can't do anything. It's almost like, where we have these Zoom minions when there was, and a person's at home, so at least he wants to be part of the action, so to speak. So a person feels bad, so let him at least think about the Shema. Everybody's doing Shema, let him at least think about the Shema. To which the Gemara then says, well, wait a minute, if that's the case, v'nigros beperek achrina, so let him engage in a different section of the Torah while others recite the Shema. Why does he have to say the Shema particularly? So Amar Rav Adabar Ava, Rav Adabar Ava answers, B'davar sha'at tzibur oskin ba. He should occupy himself that which the congregation is involved with, because that's what everybody's doing. So he should be saying the Shema, at least contemplate the text, so at least he's on board with what everybody's doing, and that would be a proper way of behaving. Okay, so now we've got the two positions. What do we deduce from the Mishnah? Ravina deduced that here is kedibur dami, and that's the whole reason why he is maharer, so that it's like he said it, but it's not enough to violate the decree of Ezra that you should not learn Torah, because he says the only prohibition of learning Torah for a Balkari is if he actually says the words. And if you're not saying the words, like at Sinai, then it's okay. On the other hand, that was Ravina. Rav Chisda says here is not kedibur. You really haven't accomplished anything, because and therefore you haven't violated Ezra's takana. But if it's not like dibur, why are you bothering to say it? The answer is because you should feel part of the crowd, and that's all. And you should be sitting around idly, not doing anything. I mean, you could say on another way, just not. Imagine guys in Shul, and everyone's saying Shema, and he's like, can't think about the Shema, can't do anything. So like, what are you doing? So you're going to whip out your iPhone and do all kinds of other things, right? So, it's not good to be sitting idly by. So therefore, at least be engaged in that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, those are the two positions. Going up to the top of Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph. So now the Gemara is going to ask a question on the first opinion, or not finish it, ask on the second opinion. So you say, okay, so what do you tell me? A person should not be sitting idly by. Okay, so let's look at what we know from somewhere else, was not in our Mishnah, but later on source. Okay, so you're saying a person, according to you, Rav Chizl, a person should not be sitting idly by while the congregation is saying the Shema. Well, what about the Amida? The Amida, the Dover Shat Tzibur Oskim Bo, that's something the whole congregation's involved with when we say the Shemona Esrei together. And let's see what another Mishnah says. Tanam. And the Mishnah coming up, next page, is going to say the following. Omed B'Tfila, if the person was in the midst of davening, he's in the middle of Shemona Esrei, V'nizker shu bal keri. And all of a sudden he remembers he's a bal keri and did not go to the mikveh in the morning. So now what do? I mean, you're not supposed to be davening, right? And now you're in the middle of the Amida and you realize you're a bal keri. So what do? So the Mishnah says, lo yafsik. You don't stop, but you still can't go on with a whole Shmoneh Esrei like that. Eliyah Katzer, but you shorten each of the brachas, where, every bracha is a whole paragraph. You could just say the first line of the bracha and then the Baruch Atah Hashem and make it in a bridge type of a Shmoneh Esrei. That's what the Mishnah says. Now, the question is, why did Mishnah state it in that fashion? What can we deduce from that fact? Well, it would appear Taima the Askel, the only reason he's allowed to continue with the Amida, it would appear, is because the Askel, he already started saying it. And therefore, if he already started saying it, okay, we can let him finish. It's going to look very bad. He's in the middle of talking to Hashem and he just closes his mouth. Lo Askel. What if he did not start? What's the implication of if he did not start? Must be lo Yaskel. He should not begin. Because pick the case where he started. Okay, if you started already, so finish it off that way. But what if you never started? You shouldn't do it. That's the implication. Now, wait a minute. You just said that when we have the Amida, the Shema, say the Shema, so you'll be part of everybody. So really, it's interesting. So therefore, it can be part of everybody. So be part of everybody as well over here. If here is not kedibur, so just do that as well. So the answer is shiny tefillah. Davening is different. The Leislei Malchus Shemayim. It's not really that important relative to the Shema because it doesn't have the accepting of the yoke of heaven. So therefore, it's not imperative for the Baal Keri to join the congregation. On the other hand, the Shema, which is dealing with the Mamish Kabbalah's O Malchus Shemayim, that's very important. So he should join the congregation at least through thinking. Okay, even though the Amida is very important, and we've mentioned, women have to say it because you have to ask for rachamim. Wonderful. So go to the mikvah. Okay. But when talking about everybody is accepting the yoke of heaven, so that's something that's much more serious. So therefore, we can make the difference. Accepting the yoke of heaven, if everybody's accepting the yoke of heaven, then you do it. But if people are not accepting the yoke of heaven, then there's no need for you to do that. That's what the Gemara's first answer is, which Gemara is not happy with that answer. Because let's go back to our Mishnah and see what did we say about benching. But let's go back to our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said that about Keri can think about benching. So we can think about benching. It doesn't have any accepting the yoke of heaven. Utnan, and it says Al Hamazon Mevorech Le'achrav. For benching, you make a bracha afterwards in your mind. You don't make it beforehand. So that doesn't have Ol Malchus Shemayim. So we have three scenarios here. So now we have to find an idea that cuts across all three. So by benching, you think about it. Okay. By Shema, you think about it. And the Amida not. So how are you dividing things up? So the more has to come up to a fight, and can't just say, well, he should be engaged with the congregation. Well, only when it's Malchus Shemayim. Okay, great, but benching, there's no Malchus Shemayim. So where do we have a clear opinion that goes straight through and applies to every scenario? Ella, what we have to say, and this becomes the final answer. Something that's biblical. Shema is biblical. Benching is biblical. So for a biblical mitzvah, that's an important thing. We don't want a guy to go away without any involvement with the biblical mitzvah. So even though he's not fulfilling the mitzvah, that would be a reason to do it. Okay. Utfila dirabanan. But the Amida is the Rabbanan. That's a big machlokas rishonim about this. But at least the formal prayers that we have and saying Hashem's name is the Rabbanan. And here, let's take a look at the commentary over here. Okay, benching, we already know, is biblical. Torah says, V'chalta v'savata v'rach. The Gemara is going to mention again in a minute. Interesting, the particular themes mentioned in each of the brachas of benching are likewise derived from Sukkim, as we'll learn later on in the 6th parak. The Shema, interesting now, you'll see in the further Gemara, it's not so simple. Gemara says, and you shall speak about them when you lie down and when you rise. Okay, so that's also a biblical obligation. The obligation for tefillah is derabbanan, is only rabbinic. So that becomes the answer. Something that's biblical, it's important to think about it, even if you're not fulfilling the mitzvah. Something that's rabbinic, no point at all. It's only rabbinic. The truth of the matter is, as much as this was all a question on the opinion, we started off on the opinion that's saying here is not kedibur. This last question would also be a question on the person who says here is kedibur dami. Same question would be asked. Why did the Gemara not ask it on him? Because this answer of Doraisa Rabbanan, that's what we assumed all along. But since the second answer gave a different reason initially and says, well, he should be engaged in what the congregation's doing, that's why we asked the question. But it turns out at the end of this Gemara, both opinions, the opinion that says that thinking is like speech and the opinion that says thinking is not like speech, all have to have the same final answer as this. The one who says, well, it's like speech and he should be, then it makes sense. If it's biblical, yes, how can we not have him do a biblical mitzvah, at least in the best way to not totally go against the issue of the Balkari? While the other opinion is saying, same answer, but with a different thrust, that no, here it doesn't really help. But even if it doesn't help, but if it's a biblical mitzvah, do what you can, and at least think it. Rabbinic, you don't even have to bother to do that. Now, it is interesting, the Rambam says there is a biblical obligation to pray. Never. So that, how are you going to understand the Gemara? The Gemara is saying this. Nevertheless, even according to the Rambam, the extent of this obligation is merely to articulate some form of prayer at some unspecified point during the day. The obligation to pray at specific times and the particular text of prayers that we recite are all of rabbinic origin. And this accounts for the Gemara's classification of its being a rabbinic mitzvah. Okay, now, it's interesting, again, the Gemara right now follows the accepted opinion that Kriya Shema is the Rabbanan. The Gemara later on is going to give an opinion that disagrees with that, and how they're going to answer this question here, that would be an interesting point. We're not going to do that right now. Now, again, although the Balkari, the note 6, although Balkari does not actually fulfill the obligation of recital with his contemplation of Shema and Birchas HaMazon, still the saying of these texts is biblically mandated, and he ought to do whatever he can in the matter and at least contemplate their words. Good. It seems that we're at this point that the sole criteria for evaluating whether a Balkari must contemplate a text is whether recitation of text is mandated by biblical or rabbinic law. The question of whether the rest of the community is also reciting the text at that particular time no longer seems to be relevant. For indeed, Birchas HaMazon is quite often recited alone, not in a communal setting. So you see, that was the final point. So it really doesn't really matter with community or not, although in the beginning it seemed to be that, but that was only according to the second opinion that here is not Kedibur, but even that fell off. So now it comes out that according to either opinion, you should still be Maharer it. Now, just regarding the issue of if tefillah is deraisa or derabbanan, which is fascinating, it's a much larger discussion. But okay, I'm just going to leave it. It's really too far off topic. I don't want to go there. Okay, what's the final ruling? We rule hirur lav kedibur dami. We rule at the end. The final psak halacha is hearer is not like speech. And therefore, we really see that from other Mishnayos, where the Mishnah had a machlokas, and we paskin, do you have to say the Shema loud enough for you to hear it? Or what if you don't say it loud enough for you to hear it? And we paskin like the one that says, B'di'evid your yotze, even if you don't say it loud enough to hear it. So now, if that's the psak there, but if hearer is lav kedibur, then it would seem if hearer is lav, if hearer is kedibur dami, if thinking is like speaking, so then why, if you say the words not loud enough, you're yotze? I mean, you could be yotze even without that. Be yotze with just thinking. So therefore, we see that thinking alone is not the mitzvah. And therefore, if you look at the siddur and you're reading it like you read a book and you don't say anything, you have not fulfilled the mitzvah. Any mitzvah that needs to be articulated, at least you have to mouth it, and it may not be heard to your ears, but at least you said it, but you didn't hear what you were saying. But just thinking and scanning is for sure not yotze the mitzvah at all. Now, if chas v'shalom, a person is mute, okay, so then, okay, we would see from here that, I guess, things that are biblical by nature, you should say, and things that are rabbinic by nature, you don't have to say. Doesn't mean you can't read it anyway. You might want to read it for whatever spiritual benefit can exist. Now, I would say, let's say a person has a very sore throat and talking is very bad. Again, you don't have to know every situation, but still moving your lips, making the facial movements so that the words are articulated, but extremely, you can't even hear it. So it's even less than a whisper would be okay. You'd be even filling the mitzvah. But if the doctors say you can't even open your mouth, okay, then it would appear that only in a biblical mitzvah are you obliged to think and read it, and then already, because you're really not fulfilling a mitzvah. You could always scan, but you wouldn't be obliged, because then you're not fulfilling a mitzvah. And that ends
Rabbi,
this. Okay, any questions now? Thank you for being so patient.
Question. So, Rabbi, how come the Gemara, doesn't it refer at all to Hannah when she was moving her lips and Ellie thought she was drunk? And to answer this question as well? Because then we come up with it, as long as you're moving your lips.
From that, we see that you don't say it loudly.
Right, that's what I'm saying. But it doesn't refer to that as part of the answer here.
No, because it could be she didn't even have to say anything. Listen, normal people say davening. Normal people, regular people say davening softly, right? But you say it. You're saying the Amida, right? You're supposed to say it, right? So what she taught Eli doesn't have to be so loud, but you still have to say it. It wasn't that she wasn't saying it. She heard what she was saying, but that's the lechat. Everyone agrees that's the lechatchila, but the question is, b'di'evet is here kedibur dami. No one's going to argue. Yes, every Jew should say the Shemona Esrei loud enough for him to hear it. Everybody agrees to that. Now we're in a question where you're about carry. So what do you do then? So hearer is obviously in cases where speech is not the optimal option. That's all we're saying. Okay, anything else?
So, just one more thing. Just on Zuketa Zimra. So obviously it's preferable to say the whole thing out loud, but if you just reading it, are you yotze, or do you even have to worry about it for Zuketa Zimra? Now we're just talking about only Yamid and the Shema and bench.
Again, this discussion here is about people who has a Balkari and has a problem that they're not able to read. They're not allowed to. But now you're addressing a different issue, right? A regular person like you and I. A regular person like you and I are obliged to say every word of the davening. There's no reason, there's no initial thought that one should do it otherwise. right? And that's why the earlier Gemara said, well, what if the Shema, you said it, but not loud enough for you to hear, which everyone agrees is not even an optimal situation. Are you b'diavad yotzei? So, again, and so for us, we certainly have to say every word of every page of the daven. You cannot scan at any. The only question is, would you be yotzei? So we're saying you're not even going to be yotzei. So you're not yotzei saying Sukkot Zimra. Remember, Sukkot Zimra is singing praises to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So let's try to go back a little bit, to the olden days. The olden days where men, when they courted women, really used expression as an important way of showing their love. And, you'd read poetry to the woman. You do all kinds of things, and she'd hear you. Now, she's got to hear you. You got to say it. She's got to hear. So therefore, you got to say, if you're really talking to Hashem or you're singing His praises, singing praises is done by singing praises. It's not by thinking them. That's thinking is not engaging your whole body. King David says, "Kol atzmosai tomarna," my entire bones speak your praises. Talking and saying praise of Hashem, even if you're not talking to Hashem, saying praises to Hashem. When you're saying it, the words create a reality. As we say in the Hallel, Hamanti ki adaber. I believed and therefore I said. And the Hasidic pshat is, I came to believing by saying. Saying is a very powerful means of assimilating concepts, reaffirming concepts, feeling concepts. It's a very important thing. This idea of reading quiet, this idea of a library, this is where the problem exists. Because for a long time, the non-Jewish world had libraries. And libraries, the first rule was, shh, which is not a Jewish concept at all. Remember, one of the 48 ways to wisdom is that you got to say the words. You don't get smart. You can tell me there's people, doctors and all these things, they're big geniuses with this and that. Wonderful. But the most complicated science does not come close to a page of Gemara. And what you accomplish by reading a page of Gemara. When you're dealing with touching on the infinite godly reality of Torah and davening and talking to Hashem, it's meant to be articulated and said. It creates all kinds of spiritual realities. Every word you say creates malachim. Thinking when one should be speaking does not create the same effect. Now, what are you going to say? So there's no avoda of thinking? Of course there's an avoda of thinking. The avoda of thinking, there's different parts to a human being's conscious reality. And the Nefesh HaChaim talks a lot about this in his Sefer. There is thought, speech, and action. Each part creates another aspect of the spiritual reality. It affects the higher worlds. That the aspect of speech affects this world, the world of Asiyah, and then there's higher worlds, and therefore thought, speech, action. Let's reverse that. Action affects the world down in Asira. Then talking is the world higher of Yetzira, and thinking is the higher level of the world of Bria. There's all kinds of multi-level realities. And the human soul, the Jewish soul, is in different realms. We're not only in this world. Other aspects of our soul are in other worlds, so to speak, that have a confluence within our neshama inside. And the ability to speak comes from the inside. So there's an avoda of thinking. And the avoda of thinking creates tremendous realities. And really, if we, like I said last week, if we daven correctly, we should be thinking about what we're about to say. And the thinking itself creates a reality. The thinking alone is not enough. Then has to come the speech. The speech creates a different reality. The speech brings it out into the open. It's no longer inside of you. It is now brought out and trying to connect to beyond yourself on that level of reality. And then you have good old-fashioned physical action. That's why Reb Chaim says that davening is really one of the greatest forms of avodas Hashem, because you're supposed to be engaged on all three aspects. So there's the thinking aspect, there's the speaking aspect, and there's the doing. You're going to ask, well, what are you doing when you're davening? So he says, you're moving your lips. You're moving your lips, and that's a movement. You're shaking your body, those kinds of things. So it's very important to daven. The fact that the rest of the world, and then when you're learning, you should be speaking or listening to someone who is speaking, and Shomea Ko'enim. When you're listening to me, it's like you're all speaking now, so to speak. So therefore, that's incredible to do that. This idea of reading, yeah, okay, if you have the Rebbetzin Jungreis book, okay. So therefore, there's a realm of thinking. You don't have to read it out loud. But when you're talking about Torah, which is the word of Hashem, and you want to connect to Hashem, then there's an aspect of speaking. So I understand, but many people feel, when other people are davening, it's disturbing me, and I can't do this. It's only because you've had a very poor education in life of how to learn. You've not been taught properly. You've been taught how to learn secular things. You have not been taught how to learn Torah. And again, I persist with this idea, and I still don't understand people who disagree with it. If everybody davens out loud, if everyone davens out loud, no one will be disturbed. It's a function of your ear. When you are talking, the other noise does not bother you, and therefore you can do it. If you're focused on what you're doing, you're able to accomplish that. So that's why we're saying the reading is so important. It was a long answer to your short question, Shelley. Any more comments, questions?
A good answer, thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Okay, and we'll bring up some new topics tomorrow. Okay, have a good day, everybody.
Have a good day.
Shkoyach.